We know that the Vikings were obsessed with silver. The Viking Age is often deemed the Silver Age, and there are buried treasures all over the Viking world, some of which I've already discussed on the channel. In terms of superlatives, the largest Viking Age silver hoard ever discovered reaches a staggering 67 kilograms, and it is called the Spillings Hoard, discovered on the island of Gotland. So in this video, we're having a look at what it consists of, where it was buried, and what it can tell us about society in general. So the most substantial and significant accumulation of Viking Age precious metal ever recovered is the Spillings Hoard. It was discovered in 1999 on a farm in Otem parish on the Swedish island of Gotland. It is composed of two primary silver hoards weighing 27 kilograms and 40 kilograms respectively, and these were hidden beneath the floorboards of a building interpreted as a Viking Age warehouse or utility structure. If we look at the origins of the coins, the numismatic profile of the hoard is overwhelmingly oriental. That means that the hoard contains over 14,000 coins, of which more than 99% are Islamic dirhams minted in very exotic Eastern locations such as Samarkand and Bukhara. These coins originated from 69 different mints located across what are now 15 countries in Asia, Africa, and also Europe, clearly showing us the vast reach of northern trading activities. The latest coin in the assemblage provides a terminus 870 or 871, suggesting that the hoard was concealed just prior to the Viking Great Army's activities in England. One standout feature of the numismatic collection is the so-called Moses coin. This is a unique Khazar imitation bearing the Arabic inscription Musa Rasul Allah, so Moses is God's messenger, which mirrors the standard Islamic creed and also provides the first archaeological link between Judaism and the Khazar Khaganate. The Khazars converted to Judaism. Beyond coinage, the silver component includes an unparalleled volume of bullion, specifically about 500 silver arm rings, that means bracelets and bangles, also approximately 80 silver ingots or bars, 25 finger rings, and a vast quantity of spiral rings and cut silver fragments. Much of this material was bundled together into consistent units of weight that correspond to the Viking Age weight system, where 1 mark was equal to approximately 200 grams. This suggests that we are heading towards a more regulated bullion economy, where precious metal functioned as a commodity valued by its intrinsic purity and mass, and not really by its numismatic face value. The bundling indicates that silver was being prepared for large-scale transactions and also systematic storage, and it allowed Gotlanders to quickly assess significant sums without having to weigh every individual fragment. The broader Viking Age weight system into which it integrated included a couple of subdivisions. So first of all, we have this mark, approximately 200 grams. Then we also have the öre or örar, each approximately 25 grams. There is also a unit called örtug, each approximately 8.6 grams. And then a group of 240 pennies, functioning again as a weight unit and not really as a currency count. The presence of about 400 weights at related Gotlandic assembly sites like Ruma, many of which are spherical with flat poles or polyhedral, would confirm that these standards were enforced through the use of high precision scales. So this is a very important take, the fact that in the Spillings weight system, these about 14,000 Islamic dirhams were treated identically to unworked silver. So Gotlanders did not recognize the value of foreign currency. The coins were rather weighed than counted. To achieve the precise weight required for a transaction, they were frequently halved or quartered, or even reduced to minute shavings of hack silver. The hoard is very, very fragmented, which means that the system was granular enough to accommodate everyday commerce, so not only long-distance trade. Much of the silver was organized to fit into the established units that we already mentioned, so they did come up with quite a sophisticated level of commercial organization. Now, as you can imagine, a critical component of this system was verifying the quality of silver. Since the value was predicated on purity, traders utilized nicks and pecks, so that would be tiny indentations made with a knife to check the softness of the metal. This ensured that the silver was not a base metal forgery plated in precious metal, which was a practice sufficiently common to warrant such constant vigilance. In some instances, Gotlandic metalworkers employed cupellation, which means a fire assaying process by which they refined debased silver that was then incorporated back into the weight system as bullion. The Spillings weight system was a tool for trade, but it also served a social and maybe also spiritual function. The bundling of silver into marks allowed for the public display of status and power, as also described by a couple of Arab travelers like Ibn Fadlan, who noted that a man's wealth was visibly measured by the number of rings his wife would wear, with each ring representing a specific weight standard, such as 10,000 dirhams, for example. Might also be some kind of ontological logic to it as well, in the sense of wealth hidden in the earth during one's lifetime would also be available for use in the afterlife. So, in the sense, a treasure like Spillings would calculate both earthly capital and also your spiritual investment in Valhalla. Anyway, more importantly, Spillings tells us a lot about Gotlandic society, more generally speaking. As the largest Viking Age treasure ever recovered, it signifies primary evidence for Gotland's role as the turntable or hub of the Baltic trade network. We've already mentioned that silver was not merely being stored as loot, but it was also being prepared for these large scale commercial expeditions and also systematic capital management. Then the observation that the Samanid dirhams from mints from Samarkand and Bukhara are overwhelmingly dominant, so it really pinpoints this eastern orientation of Gotlandic trade, which linked the island directly to the Silk Roads. The island would operate as a primary nexus for the flow of silver and exotic commodities between the Islamic East and the North Atlantic West. Sites such as Porviken, Frøyel, and Visby served as a seasonal or permanent hub for boat building, for example, also manufacturing of goods, and of course, international trade. Frøyel, for instance, was a major center for refining silver through cupellation and also for manufacturing prestigious items like imported rock crystal lenses. Gotland's wealth was also not restricted to precious metals. In fact, a third deposit was identified a mere 1.5 meters away from the Spilling silver hoards, containing approximately 20 kilograms of bronze scrap. This was housed in a 7th century spruce wood chest, so something older than the Viking Age, that also had an ingenious locking mechanism. So it seems that the local manufacturing industry was really thriving. The bronze came from broken jewelry from the eastern Baltic, so Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, which had been partially melted together into a sort of cake to serve as raw material for metal casting. Because base metals like iron and bronze were not found naturally on the island, they had to be imported. And this means that Gotlandic craftsmen were specialized in recycling and refining foreign materials into native Gotlandic jewelry styles, such as the very distinctive box shaped and animal head brooches. The fact that the Spillings Hoard was buried beneath the floorboards of a utility building or a warehouse rather than some elite place is also extremely telling. Gotlandic society seems to have functioned quite differently, more like a egalitarian republic of merchant farmers, because unlike mainland Scandinavia, Viking Age Gotland shows no archaeological evidence of kings or chieftains or any kind of centralized aristocracy. Instead, wealth appears to have been relatively evenly distributed among nearly 2,000 independent farmsteads. But then again, of course, we have slavery, which is why the term egalitarian really needs to be relativized. So, settlement on the island typically consisted of solitary farmsteads or small clusters, which shifted location with their territories over centuries as soil fertility changed. During the Iron Age and migration period, the most typical building was the three-aisled longhouse, approximately 20 to 30 meters in length, with wide stone walls or at least some stone foundations. During the Viking heyday, however, there were rather modest timber framed structures, and many of them on land that is still cultivated today, which makes it very difficult to, research them. So their locations are interpreted rather from objects and artifacts, and of course, the main source for the Viking Age remains the graves. What is absolutely fascinating is that every farm on the island typically yields at least one silver hoard, which does suggest a society where almost every freeholding family participated in long distance trade. The Spillings Hoard was indeed exceptional in scale and belonged to a prosperous family, but this wealth was generated by a more decentralized, collectively run system of harbors and beach landings. The term farmanabondi applies here, a term which means the traveling farmer. So basically, it would have been someone combining agricultural subsistence with participation in all kinds of trading activities. The island seems to have been governed by a tiered system of local law assemblies. You probably recognize the term for that, the thing. It was divided into thirds, the tredingar, and sixths, the sittungar, which were further subdivided into 20 local jurisdictions, each overseen by an elected judge or elder, the domare. The supreme political and judicial authority resided in the Gutnaol Thing, which met at the central site of Roma. Recent archaeological investigations at the associated site of Guldåkern have recovered hundreds of weights and coins, so likely we are dealing with a public arena for both legal proceedings and some pretty extensive commercial exchange. But Gotland did maintain a voluntary and loose protective alliance with the Swedish kings at Uppsala. They were paying a yearly tribute of 60 silver marks in exchange for tax free access to Swedish markets. Nevertheless, it did remain effectively autonomous, and its laws made no mention of royal power. Legal codes like the Gyttalag mandated that farms would remain undivided to maintain economic viability, which is brilliant, but at the same time, this would force the younger sons to, take scrip and scales to seek fortune elsewhere. There have also been some very interesting isotopic studies at the port of Ridanes, for example, in Föjel, which suggested a predominantly local population. On the other hand, recent large scale DNA analysis paint a different picture, one of extreme genetic variation. This evidence would support the idea of Gotland being a cosmopolitan hub with a significant influx of foreign individuals and a very diverse community, very much shaped by all these connections going in all directions. So it was very much transcontinental. So, from many points of view, Gotland was definitely a very special place in the Viking Age. It maintained a distinct visual and ritual language as well, visible in examples like the box shaped brooch tradition or the picture stones with very rich mythological iconography. One very bizarre and fascinating custom retrieved from Gotland that points to interesting cultural contacts and identity formation was the custom of skull modification. So that's the video on the channel that I would watch next. I really hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please do consider joining the channel. Members do get access to a lot of bonus material, including university lectures. If not, you can just support me on Patreon because I would really like to share much more with you. Thank you so much. This was Irina. Take care and till next time.